Welcome to MDV The Blueprint. I am your host, Michael Della Vella, and today we are going to discuss radon with the guru of radon, Ari Ghahremani. Ari, thank you for doing this.
Sure, thank you guys.
There's going to be so much to unpack here today. I can't wait to discuss this. When people heard that I was going to have you on, they actually like, hey, can you ask Ari this? Can you ask Ari that? So some of these questions that they're coming from agents that,
I gotcha.
You know, we've been in the business for a long time, and
Sure.
and most people know what radon is. But before we get into that, could you tell me the Radon Survey Systems background?
Radon Survey Systems is actually designed by my father. He put the systems and the company together in the late 70s and early 80s. We have become one of the leading companies for radon testing and mitigation in Northeast Ohio. We have over 30,000 customers.
You go outside of the Cleveland area?
So we're Northeast Ohio.
Northeast Ohio.
So east, we go all the way out to, let's say, Perry, Madison area. West will come out to Sheffield, close to Sandusky. We try not to go that far. And south will go down to like Akron, Canton area.
Was your father a doctor?
So my father is a doctor.
He's a doctor.
He's a PhD in geochemistry. So he's a earth doctor, I guess. He loves geology and talking about rocks and formations. And that's why he got involved in radon. And he worked with Case Western University for some time, using radon to do other things other than indoor air. He was actually using radon to find oil in the ground way back when. And he helped the university actually find several oil wells that they were able to tap into oil, and they dried up quickly, but his theories and his work did prove to be true in some of those areas. The actual company was in the early 80s.
But were you one of the first in Northeast Ohio?
So we were one of the first in East Ohio. Since then, obviously, there's many competitors now. We were definitely one of the first, and he helped also write some of the laws with the state, and he was on countless different boards. I was on a few boards for the state also. We just kept growing from there, kind of.
Were you always involved in the company, or did you do something and then get into it?
I was involved in the company since I was very, very young.
Really?
I would go with my dad to go different sites and check out different foundations and building projects. And I was just a kid, but that's basically what we did. And we talked about it. And then over time, I got my license. I might have been one of the youngest to get a radon testing license too. I think I was 17 or 18.
It's funny because you were always a voice on the phone for years. I just call up. Kudos that you always pick up the phone.
I always pick up the phone.
You always pick up the phone.
Yep.
And voice on the phone, I'd put, you'd tell me what to do. I'd ask you questions. And then it was actually in my neighborhood. I was having you guys were installing something, and I went in to talk to the installers. And I'm talking, and I hear, you'd say something to me. I'm like, Ari?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought that was so cool that you actually do go out on the job, because it was a little more complicated. It was a home in Westlake, and you were out there talking to your guys, but you're very hands-on in your business.
I'm always hands-on.
Always hands-on. That's fantastic.
Digging holes with the guys, drilling holes.
And you were
getting dirty.
Because I'm looking at you. You were covered in mud. I'm like, Ari?
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing in the hole?
Always sucking dirt is what they say we do. But yeah, I think it's good to be involved.
Oh my God, I think that's awesome.
Point a finger and say, go do it.
Yeah.
You got to go out there. You got to show them. You got to have a good plan. You got to lead by example. That's what I like to do.
I think that's awesome. So if we start out, why don't you explain what radon is?
Radon's a naturally occurring gas that comes from the ground. It comes from the decay of uranium and radium in the ground and in the soil and in the rocks. Depending on what type of material you have in different soils and what depths they are in, you can get different concentrations of radon that come up through the soil and through the earth into the homes that are above them. Depending on how the houses are built, that is going to determine which house has a higher level or lower level.
So if we're just talking Northeast Ohio here, our soil, there's a lot of shale. In another life, when I was building homes with my father and we were putting in foundations, a lot of the foundation you would see digging. It's so much shale that you're breaking up. And, you put the basement in, you go through the whole stuff, and then you get to the end when you're grading and you're getting ready for landscaping.
Okay.
So this is crazy. And tell me if you've seen this. The city comes out and they give you the proper grade. This is what it is. The earth movers will grade everything, and everything looks great. You can throw some topsoil on. It looks real smooth, ready for grass to be set. And then it rains. And all of a sudden you'll look it could be an hour. And it's like it grew rocks
I understand.
everywhere. And somebody I spoke to was like, the soil here in Westlake grows rocks when it rains. You can do all this clearing, but then you have all these rocks come up.
That's true. So in this area of town, a lot of those shale layers of rock are a lot closer to the surface. So when the builders do break ground, they do hit those shale rocks, and then they end up spreading them around and breaking them up. So what happens is when they are putting the landscape dirt or whatever over them, if it rains, the rock is smooth and the dirt is on top, and the dirt just slides off the rock. So that's how you're forming rocks, or building rocks around the property. But if you look anywhere in Westlake or Avon Lake, you can just see all these gray rocks around these houses. They're all over the place.
Everywhere.
And you have to design the house, in my opinion, to have some radon resistant construction in there to help you with that.
So what kind of materials can they do in new building today to help prevent this?
So to help, we're never going to actually prevent the radon from coming up, but you can slow it down. A lot of builders will when they put the gravel down before they pour the cement, they're going to put a layer of visqueen plastic. That helps. Then they can also install what we call radon resistant construction, where we run piping underneath the plastic into the gravel and bring those pipes up and run them through the house and through the roof.
I've never seen this done, and I know that's something that we never did in home. So when did this?
So it's not a law that they have to do it, but it's more of an optional thing. A lot of buyers will, now that radon is a bigger thing, it's part of the optional parameters of when you're building a house. The builder will ask you, do you want the radon passive radon system? The idea is you're going to run piping from the sub slab material. It's perforated. And then the piping, when it comes up through the house, it's rigid, solid, no more holes, and it goes up through the roof and out. And then the idea is after the house is built, you do the testing, have a radon professional come do the testing. And if it's high, you have this pipe that's in the ground already, and the pipe is hidden through the walls, so you can't see it, and it goes up through the roof. So all you do is end up adding a fan or activating the passive system at a later time. Even if you don't activate it or add a fan, it's said that they basically will lower your radon level about 10%.
No kidding.
Even without a fan, just from the natural effect of how the air is flowing.
Radon, we know it's everywhere because it's in the rocks and the uranium breaks down. What makes one home have it more than your neighbor?
Underneath, let's say you have a street and there's 10 houses. Underneath the whole street, there's going to be those layers of shale or other rocks that are going to cause it. And every single home is going to have the radon underneath it, the same amount or close to the same amount. Then each particular house is going to have its own set of fissures or cracks or entry routes, I would say, to the house. So you have to have the source, which is in the ground everywhere, and then you have to have the entry routes. So if one house has, let's say, a dirt crawl space and then a cement floor for a basement, well, the radon is just going to come in through that dirt crawl space. Right. If it's got a sump crock with a drain tile that goes around it and the sump's wide open, the radon's going to come up, go into these tiles, come into the sump, and then come into the basement. Every single house, when a builder builds it, as you know, they make saw cuts in the cement so that if the cement were to crack, it would expansion joint. Yeah, they would crack in those directions that the builder wants it, So all those will let radon in. Some builders put they'll rough in a bathroom, they'll put the pipes up, and then they'll put that open section for the tub. There's a big section that they'll leave, and then a lot of times that plastic will crack, and then that lets it in. So there's all sorts of different ways for it to get in. So
if you don't have a system in the newer practice of like that pipe you were talking about, like how the expansion will go from the wall to the floor, all that should be sealed with caulk, correct?
So the floor wall joint,
yes,
that sometimes will crack,
yes,
and that should be sealed.
That should be sealed. Stress cracks, small cracks in the foundation wall, same thing.
Same thing. Anything that you can seal up that will help increase the amount of suction and the pressure field that we're trying to produce underneath the slab is going to lower the radon level at a higher rate. So let's say, I've seen them before where people will just put the radon system in and not seal any cracks. And let's say the radon test passes and everything's fine. Well, you can see that when the radon is being pulled from underneath the slab, when it gets to that crack, it's going to start pulling the air from the basement down through the crack and then across the floor into the pipe and out. So it's basically, it's not as efficient. It's not going to extend
gotcha.
past that.
I got you.
So that's what we call pressure field extension. When you seal that crack, then it goes to the next section. And then you seal that crack and it goes to the next section. So if you seal all the cracks in the basement, you're going to get a much better radon result.
I got you.
We're not shooting for 3.9 because the cutoff is 4.0.
When you-
My goal is to get them all below 1.0.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's my goal.
So here's a myth. If you don't have a basement, you shouldn't have any radon.
Right. That is a myth.
It is a myth.
I still hear it today.
I hear it all the time.
Right.
We don't have it. What are your thoughts on
Right.
that?
So good and bad news is you won't have a basement, which is lower in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So the likelihood of the test, having a higher concentration may be a little less. But bad news is if you're buying a slab house, you're living on the first floor. And that's the level where the radon would be coming into. So people that have a basement, the radon's coming into the basement. So let's say it's 4 or 5 in the basement, but they don't spend a lot of time in there. They spend most of their time on the first floor or the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time the radon gets up to those levels, a lot of times it'll be less than 4. That house should still be mitigated, but they're not exposed to as much. But when you're on a slab house, you're the first level where the radon's coming in. So even though it may not be as higher of frequency to have radon levels fail, you're being exposed to that radon, whatever it is, for 24/7 because that's the level that you're living on. So it's actually the opposite. Like, every house should be tested no matter what, but people that are on a slab should definitely check their house because they're eating, breathing, sleeping all on that level. And that's where the radon's coming in.
Let's say I think I don't have radon because my neighbor has it on the left of me and my neighbor has it on the right of me.
Okay.
Myth being, well, all the radon is being sucked out of the ground, so I don't have to worry about it. My neighbors have it.
I see.
You ever heard that before?
That's a horrible idea.
Horrible idea.
Horrible idea.
Right.
Right. Because like I was saying before, all the houses are going to have the sources underneath them, but each house has a different entry route. So even if they have radon systems on either side of you, your house is totally independent. Your foundation is independent. So you definitely have to just check it and see what it is. And hopefully you don't have it. Maybe your house is more tight or you don't have the same cracks and fissures and, other entry routes that the neighbors have.
Another could be a mess is radon. It's not a big deal. You're taking the radon out of all these houses, and you can have a neighborhood that you see the fans everywhere on the outside, and you're just putting it back outside. So you're breathing it when you walk outside.
Well, your neighbors might be pointing it at you. You never know. But we're supposed to follow a bunch of state codes and licenses and everything. We want the stacks to be pointed up into the atmosphere if possible, not horizontally. And then the atmosphere is such a huge volume of air that the radon just kind of dissipates away and gets sucked away. It's not going to come back down, or it's not going to be like this big black cloud that hangs out around the house. It kind of just like poof, it's gone. Like
it's gone.
It just goes up. Yeah.
There's no smell.
Nope.
There's no taste. Can visually see it.
Right.
And again, all my studies were as it comes up, it dissipates.
Right.
So there is a difference between radon outside and radon indoors. The radon outside, my understanding, can't harm you.
It's very negligible. Yeah.
It's the indoor radon.
Sure.
So why do you think that everybody doesn't just test for radon and make your business go through the roof?
Well, like you said, you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. So some people think my job's a joke.
When I got into this in the 90s, people were like, what a scam this is.
All right, here we go again.
Here we go. What a scam.
Right.
Turns out through studies, and I'd love to hear your opinions on this.
Sure.
It's the second leading cause of lung cancer.
True.
And it's the leading cause of lung cancer for non-smokers. And I've also heard that if you are a smoker and you live in a home with radon, you are much more susceptible to end up with lung cancer. True to any of this?
All those are true. If you're a smoker, I feel like it's the numbers, it could quadruple your chance of getting lung cancer.
I think you're correct.
Some people they can visualize radon sometimes when you say you can't see it, taste it, or smell. But if I compare it to cigarettes, then sometimes people can understand it better. So the comparison is 1 picocurie, they say is around 2 cigarettes per day. So if you have 4, which is the action level, you're smoking like 8 cigarettes a day. So that's one way where if I explain that to a person, they can kind of understand that a little bit better and they can visualize that. After talking to them, most people almost always will want to test their house because even if you have 2, right? Even if you have 2, you're smoking 4 cigarettes a day. So people don't like that. So
Mm.
2 is safe, but you're still smoking
You're
because
still
your lungs
smoking.
can get rid of those toxins and everything, if you're not smoking more than 8 or 10 a day,
When did they come up with 4 picocuries and
right?
under are safe, but above that 4.1? Where did that all come from?
So that's the EPA threshold that they've had for many, many years. There are other thresholds that other organizations have, like the World Health Organization says their threshold is 2.6, I believe. Each person, in my opinion, each buyer, each seller, if we're talking about real estate, the seller usually doesn't care that much because they're leaving.
Right.
The buyer cares because they're moving into something.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, each person, has a certain comfortable level with it. So I do have customers that have radon levels that are in 5, 6, 7, and they don't want to do anything about it. And I tell them, well, it really needs to be mitigated. You definitely should do that. They're like, well, we don't use the basement. We just put our boxes down there and that's it. Then I have some customers that have 2.5. I have one that I'm going to look at later today in Avon Lake. Their level is 2.5 to 3 or so, and they just want to get it lower. So for around $1,000 to $1,500, you want your exposure for yourself and your family to be as low as possible. So for me, I built my house 20 years ago. It was 12.2, I think. I put the radon system in and it came down to 1.2. And for me personally, even though I'm in the business, I'm always going to have a radon system in my house just because for peace of mind. And, it's just, in my opinion, there's not one thing that's negative about it, really.
I'm a complete hypochondriac. So, and being in the business, I built my home. It's probably 25, 26 years old. I have had it tested probably 2 or 3 times, twice by Marco, one by another gentleman.
Okay.
And they were always in the summer months that I tested. And I think it went from like a 1.7 to a 2.3. So it was rising. My question to you is one time enough to test for radon? And 2, does it matter if you test in the summer, spring, or winter?
Right. So that's a good question. So the radon does fluctuate throughout the year.
I believe it does.
The temperature affects it, barometric pressure affects it, wind affects it, depending on which way the winds are blowing. If you have a severe storm, you really shouldn't do like a radon test during a severe storm with extended high winds. But the best way, in my opinion, to do the testing, if you live at a property and it's not during like a real estate transaction or something, you can do what's called like a long-term type radon test kit. And the ones that we use are alpha track detectors. And they stay in a property for 90 days to a year. It's actually 91 days to a year.
Really?
Yeah. So that will give you the most accurate test that you can possibly do.
Where do I get something? Is that something you do?
We have at the office.
I want to do this, so we'll plan it. But
Okay.
something I want to do.
Okay.
And seeing what those.
So we have long-term test kits, which are the most accurate because they take all those ups and downs and fluctuations, and then they kind of like average them out. Whereas when we do the 2-day, 3-day tests, we're taking like a snapshot of the curve of the graph. So this is a 2-day shot.
Okay.
This is a 2-day shot. And then this whole graph moves up and down with the seasons, like you were talking about, summer and winter. Now, wintertime, everything's closed up usually.
Completely.
So we have less fresh air to mess with the test. In the summertime, though, when the earth dries up, we have like cracks and fissures that open up. So you can't just say it's always going to be more in the wintertime because in the summertime, it cracks and it lets the radon
Lets the radon.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why it's always fluctuating up and down. The short-term tests, we also offer mail order test kits. We also do the monitor testing. And there's also radon in the water.
That was something I wanted to.
Yeah.
We don't have that in this area, do we?
I was testing for water for over 20 years, and I never found an elevated level
in this area.
Of
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Rural areas, well water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the water could come into the house, and then through the shower, you're sitting there and breathing it in.
Is that a bigger part of what you do out there than around here? Do you do more systems?
So there are water abatement systems or mitigation systems too that deal with radon in the water, and they basically flush the water through different types of charcoal and different types of filtration. So when it comes out the other side, it's quote unquote clean water. But we never really got into that very much because we just didn't find very much elevated levels in the water. But also in the water, because you're exposed to it for a shorter amount of time, the cutoff level is not 4.0. So it's 4.0 in the air because you're exposed to the air 24/7. But if you take a shower, you're exposed to water for a short amount of time.
Sure.
15, 20 minutes, let's say. Threshold is like 4,000 for the water. So it's 4 in the air and like 4,000 for water. So there has to be a very high concentration for it to hurt you.
In general, not just the water. If I lived in a home that had, let's say it had a over 4, 7 to 10 level, and I lived there for 25 years,
Yep.
and I never did anything about it, what would you recommend? Okay, well, now you know you had a high level of radon, you live there, and your kids live there. Is there a way to get yourself tested to see if you have any effects from high levels of radon?
So you would definitely have some exposure, I would say. Effects, it's hard to say what the effects would be. For each person, it's going to be different. And since it's the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers, if you were a smoker, let's say, you have a much higher chance of getting lung cancer. So I feel like over time, you would just have to monitor your, physiological situation in your blood. And
Cough.
everything. Yeah. It's hard to say, well, you get a cough, it's because of radon or
Do you
something
know
like
anyone that died of radon?
I know several people that have,
Because of that. Wow.
yeah. We just did a job for a customer that has lung cancer, and they were in Brunswick, and the level was like 70 something. And he's been living there for like 25 years, and he's got lung cancer. He never did anything about it. So we did put the system in, and we did get it down, but he's hoping to, get past that and get into remission, but it's difficult.
If your furnace is running and that furnace is sucking in the radon gas, the radon will just disperse throughout the entire home. So it really doesn't matter. Am I correct?
That's true. It can be pushed around by the furnace and different HVAC systems. We have some properties that, let's say, are older properties, let's say a century house or something downtown somewhere, and you put a radon system in, and it can only get the radon down so far. Sometimes we have to increase the amount of fresh air in a property.
Okay.
If you can't physically suck the radon out, you can always dilute the radon so that it can be at a safe level. My dad had a saying, it's funny, he would always say, dilution is the solution to pollution. That's what he would always say to me. So if you can't physically suck it out of the house, you could always dilute it.
Slabs are not protected. People with slabs, they should test for radon.
Sure.
If you're a buyer and somebody tells you, you don't need a test, it's a slab, test for radon.
You should.
When you have a slab home, is there a difference in mitigation with the way you do the slab as opposed to a basement?
We're supposed to address each foundation slab or foundation section for each footprint of every property. So if you have a radon level of 5, let's say, and you have a basement and it's got an adjacent crawl space, you're not supposed to just put the system in the basement and then just go out the side of the house. You're supposed to address the basement slab and the crawl space slab when you're doing a radon system. So every single house foundation type needs to be addressed. And if you have a slab house, it is a little bit different because you have other things that are in the way, like you're saying, like the vents and everything. The vents for the furnace could be in the ground, in the cement. And then sometimes you have that vent that goes around the property in the slab areas. So we try and drill our hole for the slab properties in the center as much as possible, away from these types of other passageways, because you don't want to suck the air from those areas. You want to suck the air from the dirt and from the gravel that's underneath the house. So typically we go through the attic and through the roof in slab properties. Sometimes in some situations, you're not able to get a good, route for the piping. So we'll actually do the job from the outside of the property where we dig down and then we drill a hole horizontally and then we put the piping in from the outside. But typically we try and go on the interior if possible first.
Can you touch base on how a home is mitigated once you know, like I'll call you up and what's your process of how you're going to mitigate a home?
The basic outline, I guess, is I like to go visit the property and take a look at everything first and get a visual inspection done. And then we take the information back to the laboratory and the office and provide a quote depending on the foundation type and the different floor plan areas that we have to address. And we have to take into consideration, the age of the house, if it's going to have a porous material underneath the house or a non-porous material, meaning like if it's going to be a century house, it's going to be probably built on dirt.
Mhm.
Well, if the house is only 5 years old, it's going to have 4 to 6 inches of gravel. It's going to have a drain tile. It may have a sump crock. So the the system itself will probably work a little bit better. So we have to take all these things into consideration. We'll do diagnostic testing if necessary, drill holes in different areas of the slab and check and see if you have communication and suction in those areas. So there's a lot that goes into it. Over time, as you do this for years and years and years, you can kind of gauge certain things, but it's always best to go, to the house and take a look.
Ari, have you ever run into situations where I'm going to go back to the slab example?
Yeah.
So you're doing a slab home, and it actually the inspection comes up that it's got a high level of radon, and also all the ductwork that runs through the slab, and the slab has come away,
I got you.
and you have
Gaps.
moisture and gaps.
Yep.
I would imagine that you couldn't solve that problem until the ductwork problem, because wouldn't that be a draw?
Right. So anytime you have those gaps, you're going to lose pressure there.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on what the level is, like if the radon level was 25, the chances of it coming down are going to be a lot less than if it was 4.5. But we still need to try and seal all those areas, everything that we can get to. We're obviously not going to do a lot of demolition to get to those types of things to seal them. There's no way that I'm going to be able to seal each gap in the cement for the ductworks.
But would you recommend, if it's not coming down and it was a high level, would you
Yeah.
recommend you guys got to get these?
Yeah, we're gonna
ducts
at that point
fixed
we're
or-
gonna have to figure out a way to get everything sealed up, and then at that point you can also change the type of fan you're using. There's a wide variety of different fans, high suction, low suction, high volume, low volume. There's just that's when the professional comes into the equation more, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that we have to try and figure out.
Have you ever had a situation you haven't been able to fix?
We have not yet, so hopefully that doesn't happen. You can always increase the amount of fresh air, like I was saying. So if you can get a radon system down with a traditional radon system to 5, and it just won't go any further, and you've changed fans and you've done diagnostic testing and nothing's working, you can install what's called an air-to-air exchanger to bring fresh air in from outside, and then take the radon air that's left and blow it outside. So it's kind of like recirculating.
Gotcha.
And then that lowers the level from where you had it. I'm not going to give up on my customer.
What's the highest level you've ever worked with?
The highest level that I corrected was 177, and it was in Avon Lake.
And you took care of that.
And we took care of that. It came down to 3.4.
I don't know if you would remember this. We had a home that you and I did. It was over 102.
Nice.
And you got it like under 3.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't believe. And you kept saying,
remember
I'll
that.
get it. I'll get
that.
it. I'm like, all right, there's no way you're going to get this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to like using my house as an example that
Yeah.
I told you. I know I tested it twice, possibly 3 times, but over the years, I have done some remodeling to the home.
Okay.
I think every hard surface is granite. I have some natural stone flooring in the home.
Okay.
For our dear friend Marco.
Yep.
Marco's like, that's causes radon. You should.
That's-
Is that a myth or true?
So you can do testing for different types of building materials, because there's other ways that radon can come into your house. So like you're saying, if you just redo the whole house and you have granite floors or marble or other types of rocks,
slate.
Yep. You have a chance of bringing those into the home. Also, some builders, when they bring the backfill or the gravel from different quarries, some of those quarries are
all the
hot.
57 limestone, stuff like that.
Yep. It could have it in there. So you could live in an area where 15 houses were there and 12 of them are fine, but then this builder built 3 houses and they're high.
I never even thought about that. So every new construction, every foundation, I mean, you're surrounded with 57 limestone.
Sure.
So the quarries do not test for it. They
Not that I know.
just supply it.
Not that I know. They just
Interesting.
supply. Right. And then we have had a couple projects over the past 30 years where we did tell people to take the marble flooring out of this like mansion. It was in Akron. My dad was working on the project, and everything else tested fine, but this marble material was hot with radon, and they decided that they would just take it out. So it was kind of crazy to watch that happen. There was no other reason. The basement was fine, but upstairs it was like 20 something with the radon.
Do you ever test on different floors to see different levels?
So one thing that's cool about our company is we're also a state laboratory for the state of Ohio. We're the only lab left in Ohio for that can analyze charcoal detectors. We do 4-inch charcoal detectors. Everyone does use monitors these days. Most home inspectors use monitors, but I like using charcoal also because I can offer a service where I'll test the basement for a customer, let's say. But let's say, like you were saying, they have a slab area, or they want to know what's going on upstairs. So instead of putting 3 or 4 different monitors out, I can set different canisters out in different areas and test like the different areas of the blueprint of the property so that they know what's going on.
I have never seen that done before, but that sounds like a really thorough way of.
I brought you a
it.
detector too for your house.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So nice. So we're gonna do this. So if I end up having radon another low level, besides spending $1,000+ what would be the harm? Because I really believe that through the seasons and through storms that your levels could change. I live in my basement. My children, who are all gone from the home, all lived in the basement. Thank God. Hopefully the radon levels are low.
Sure.
But is there harm? I see it as a benefit for people just to install a radon mitigation system. One, you have that peace of mind. Two, I would think that it would act as a dehumidifier for a home. Am I crazy?
So the radon systems do move air from underneath the slab, and it does help lower the moisture level in the basement. Some customers have been able to just shut off their dehumidifier because this fan is sucking air 24/7. It helps with like removing allergens, I should say, and mildew and stuff like that to help some people with asthma. So it does do some other things. We've had a couple instances where people that bought properties that had some kind of odor to them in the basement, like a sewer odor or like a methane
Sewer
odor
gas.
or some kind of gas. And we've installed them to help with odors.
No kidding.
Too, yeah. So they do help do a lot of other things. Also, for me personally, if you have 10 houses on a street, the one that has the radon system is most likely going to have the lowest radon level. I don't really see too many drawbacks to it.
For people that don't do anything, we're big on opening windows in the spring and the summer. And when it was nice the past couple of days, just getting air through the home. Does that actually help lower it if you're going to sell your house or you're having a testing and you have a beautiful day and people opened up the windows and turn the fans on? Does that?
Well, we're not supposed to open up the windows
before the test happens.
Okay.
I'm saying, does that help? Do you think?
Well, before the test happens, it's fine. But the day before the test, we have to close everything up and have what's called closed house conditions. So if I get to a property and everything's wide open, I can't do the test. I have to come back the next day.
Okay, another myth. We know that you put that out there. People are opening their windows. People are cracking the basement stuff when they are. I've seen them do this.
Okay.
And I know that, sometimes the test comes out like I can see where windows were open because
Sure.
Is that correct?
Sure. So one of the pluses to using the electronic monitor is it prints out a graph for you. And it gives you a lot of information, which is nice to have with temperature and barometric pressure and all sorts of different things. So, if it's 60 degrees outside and they had the house at 68 degrees and all of a sudden you see the temperature goes down for like 12 hours, then they open the windows.
They open the windows.
Yeah. There's that. And some of the detectors have tilt indicators. One time I did a test for a buyer and I had another customer call me to do another test for the neighbor's house, like 3 houses down, the next day. So I set this one up for the home inspection and I came back the next day and I saw that someone had moved my monitor outside on the patio or whatever. They just left it there. And I just saw the thing and I just drove right by it. So obviously that test is no good. I had to come back and redo it. So the whole thing. So you just got to try and follow the instructions.
Yeah,
At some point there's got to be some kind of
it's either
honor system. I don't know.
I agree, but I know people that have done that. I'm like, you can't do that. I mean, they're going to know you did it. Now we're going to have to waste this time. I get that. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Is there a message we want to get across about radon survey systems? We want to promote you.
Sure. Yeah. Just give us a call at the office. We're at 330-963-6633. Our website is radonsurveysystems.com. I'm also going to be coming out with some CE classes, hopefully this year, for real estate professionals. So I'll be able to come to your offices and talk and offer CE. And I'm also working on a app using my data only for what I've come across in the past 30 years for realtors too.
That's fantastic.
So we're going to see how that works.
Ari, I ask everybody this. It's the name of my show. What is your blueprint for success?
Nice. That's a good question. I think blueprint for success for me is setting some achievable goals for yourself every day or throughout the year. For me, I'm more of like a daily person. I think about what I want to accomplish every day the night before. I always try to be accountable, and I always try and be there for my customers. My customers come first. I don't even believe that bottom line should always be the dollar bill. I just try and do the right thing for the customer, and then the dollar bills will come.
Are you always so chill? I mean, all I've known you is you've had a really nice disposition. You never get upset.
I'm pretty calm. It takes a lot to get me upset. I'm a pretty chill guy.
So what's up with the cowboy hat? It's a good look.
So I'm also a musician.
No kidding.
I play the violin.
I never knew this about you.
Yeah, I was going to bring it, but I decided
that's awesome.
Maybe next time I'll bring it. I play the fiddle because I'm in a country band, so it's not a violin anymore. It's a fiddle. So the name of my band is Route 212. And we play all over Northeast Ohio also.
Like, where's the next gig that you got?
I'm playing on Friday. It's going to be in Akron at a place called Nashville Nights in Akron. And then I have a website that people can go check out and see where we play.
Have you always played the fiddle / violin?
I've been playing since I was 9 years old.
No kidding.
I've been playing for 40 years. And I went to Kent State. I was one of the first non-music majors to get a scholarship at Kent State. And so I've been in an orchestra. I've been in countless bands, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a secret.
So it's
Marco
now,
knows about it. Though.
Is this your look now?
This is usually what I wear. If I'm out and about, I'll wear a cowboy hat.
When you're doing a gig, you want to?
Oh, for sure.
That's fantastic.
For sure.
That's fantastic. Yep. Well, I got to say that this has been educating, enjoyable. I love all your insight. Did I tell you? Do I know my radon?
Yeah, you do
I know my stuff.
Job. Yeah.
Ari, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been awesome.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Make sure to follow us on social media at MDV The Blueprint on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We post a ton of great content. And please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you never miss out on an episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.